based on the work of powerful directors who produce movies at Crossroads, but also their own bodies. Art and cinema, as one of the forms, has a fundamental role in the process of colonization of images and in the false aesthetic reality. So how to think about this power in the cinema from the epistemological and political point of view, how to understand the historical knowledge about the system, and as it can be a tool in the fight, in the struggle for the decolonization of aesthetics and time. This is one of the many issues that move us, and we intend to deepen them with the participants that we have here in our panel. So now we call them to come up here. The first is Sandra Alves, Camila de Moraes, Camila Maria da Silvia, Patrícia Ferreira, with the mediation of our member of AIA, Adriano de Novac.
Obrigada a todas, né?
Thank you, everyone who is here. May we have an excellent discussion.
Gente, eu vou ficar nervoso porque
I'm going to be nervous here because I'm in view of people who I admire so much, their visual production and themselves. And we thought about this together. I was one of the persons who insisted in having them here. And so I hope we can have a debate, and may this be a talk that we have here. I'm going to make a few provocations as well. And so we're going to talk about images, movies, audiovisual production. Today is a day focused on this perspective and based on history, but also thinking about time, experience, existence, in the great transformations that we wish to have, and going a bit further in revolutions as well. But we're going to talk about revolutions later on. I'm going to sit together with the girls here so that we can begin this talk. This theme, the crossroads, I think this is very nice for our event because this is to think about this perspective. And in your production, the four of you, crossroads is something that is present. You are in a space, time, spiritual, Black, indigenous, crossroads, and also ancestral one. And I'm putting these elements so that we can start our talk. And I'm going to start our talk with Sandra Alves. And I'd like you to talk a little bit to us. What do you think about the crossroads based on your work? And then we're going to provoke and build a dialogue so that it's not only me asking, but so that we can hear you in a broader sense. How is this crossroads, Sandra, for you?
Oi, gente. Alô?
Hi, everyone. Good evening? No, not really, right? Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Aya. Thank you, girls, for being here. And thank you, everyone who's not from here and to be here. And self-description, I am a Black woman. I'm fat. I have a lot of hair. I am a rebel. And I'm big. I have this black T-shirt that is beautiful, science and vaccination. And we have a pandemic that's still going on. We are here without masks. Oh, yeah, the volume is low, right? I cannot hear myself very well. Maybe that's it. Thank you.
Alô? Melhor.
Hi.
Concluindo a autodescrição, tô com uma calça.
So to conclude the self-description, I am wearing brown pants. I have a green coat because that's it. We live from the inside out, and my coat is like that as well. So this is a crossroads that provokes us to be here in this amazing theater
lindas junto, né? Isso para mim
and to
é bem importante.
see so many beautiful people here together. And
Para mim tem dois momentos,
Crossroads, there are two moments in that for me. The first is absolutely unconscious because I had two chances of dying before I was born.
né?
This is a crossroads, right? And it's an honor to have our indigenous ancestrals here and children with us, the mother's milk. So I'm very touched by this moment.
Bom, a mãe
Crossroads, right? Well, the mother, when she found out that she was pregnant, she tried an abortion. She did not have courage to do that. And then I had a chance to die there. And it was interesting to find that after a while. And another thing was to have.
Pouco, Patrícia, com a gente essa experiência.
Boa tarde a todos que estão aqui. E a autodescrição, né? Eu estou usando camiseta amarela, estou com um bebê no colo e uma calça preta. Acho que é isso. Então, eu falo a gente, né, sempre, porque a gente trabalha em coletivos, né, que nós começamos em 2007 a trabalhar com cinema, né, e justamente partiu da nossa necessidade, né, porque a gente se encontrava muito, como ele disse ali nas missões, né, onde tem o sítio, né, sítio arqueológico, que a gente frequenta, né, para vender artesanatos, né, que a gente conquistou um espaço através de muitas lutas, né, também aquele pequeno espaço, né, para a gente estar ali dentro do sítio vender artesanatos, né. Então, a partir do momento que a gente encontrou, né, conquistou esse espaço, depois de muita luta, a gente houve muitos assim encontros com os não indígenas, né, que vinham para nós, né, fazendo perguntas que não tinha nada a ver com, né, para nós assim, tipo, quem são vocês? Vocês são paraguaios? O que vocês comem? Não, né, são essas coisas e muitas vezes
Things and in many situations
para levar
to
né, que
to bring it to their academic work with good intentions, I think, and they get to the places, they see Guarani people, see the crafts, and they ask these questions. A lot of times for us, it didn't make sense. But from that on, we started a project that was able to, as we knew that there was the video in villages that taught these lessons to indigenous people for over 25 years, we started thinking how we could call people to come and teach these workshops to young people and work film and TV to explain this kind of thing, and especially think and the municipality we live in, which is São Miguel das Missões. And these are the people there that didn't know anything, especially teachers that work there in the state school. And thinking about all of this, giving the education for the guys, especially because they said that at the time, especially the professors who taught, they had this work when there was the day of the day of the indigenous people. Well, in the state, the students, they dress themselves as indigenous, and it was something that had nothing to do with us. They could invite us, talk to us, but that didn't happen. So And thinking about all of that, we were invisible. So we started working with that. And that was the starting point to our work, our meeting with culture, with what were we doing with the elderly, with the youngsters. This work um, has helped us a lot to strengthen our culture with our language, our dance, our chants, and it also helped as a mirror for us, this work that we've been doing. It's been more than 15 years. And for us, this is clear that this strengthens, and it came to help with the spoken traditions for the elderly. So I think that's it for starters. You know, in a village and two walks, what you're saying, for me, this film is very strong because it touches this question that you're mentioning, Patricia, who hasn't walked, Village and Two Walks, Uma Aldeia dos Caminhadas. The movie is very important. This is gaze from someone else, someone who's occupying a space that is righteous, and someone is questioning this space. And I think this film is able to, in a very sensitive way, as Patricia is saying, from sensitivity, it only confirms when we feel the strength of the movie. And when you talk about the strength of the movie, I think it's a moment of trying to talk to you about this. The strength I see in your work. What you want? What do you want as a director? Okay, I need my glasses. Good afternoon. I'm Camila de Moraes. Okay, my self-description: a black woman, dark skinned, has safari braids. I'm wearing a pink shirt with a shirt on top, a beige pants, socks, and pink sneakers. I'm from Rio Grande do Sul, but I live in Salvador, Bahia. It's been 12 years. And I'd like to thank you for the invitation to be here. It's been almost a year that we've been talking about being here. I want to thank Adriano for welcoming us, the behalf of the organization. And I've been thinking what this event was, what is the post-colonization, decolonization, what these terms mean with our work, and what this roundtable means, crossroads, images, and filmmaking. I don't work directly inside the academia, but how can we make our bodies have this connection with academia and walk alongside it, walk together and see each one in a place that is extremely important for us to take this step and talk about our narratives, the importance of this crossroads. So when Sandra talks about age 21, I went to live in Salvador when I was 21. So I left Porto Alegre. We were raised by a solo mother, me and my siblings. So when I left Porto Alegre to live in Salvador, it was a moment in which I needed to live. I needed to understand what it was to go to a different area, to the northeast region, a region where black people were more identifiable in the streets, and understand a different history. Today, when we are, if we can talk about this cross paths, we are in a cinema exhibit this morning. We're talking about this expanded time, and I could understand that I have this different time. I lived in this expanded time and this different relationship, which is where we can start expressing ourselves and understanding how we can actually cause revolutions through art. So if we're here, me as a Black woman from Rio Grande do Sul, talking about anti-racist matters, racism fighting matters, being present and not only surviving in this world. And we had a film today that talked about that, how it is to be a Black woman, how it is to be in this world and as a Black woman, and to be well in this world. I think filmmaking is a tool that we have to make use of to have these dialogues. So understanding this, we started working this way. So when I got to Salvador, I went to Salvador to live this experience. But as a child, we went to since children we went to Salvador. So I graduated at journalism school, using affirmative action places in university. And for a long time, I understood that knowledge is not only made in academia, but I understood that people in academia are extremely important for these dialogues, especially this space that we are here today. And it was within academia that I had the access to equipment. And the first equipment that I was able to handle, I'm from a family of militants of the Black movement. My father is a screenwriter and journalist. My mother's an actress. We always lived from art, but it was inside the academia that I started having access and started handling. It was there that I made my first documentary. It's called Mãe de Gay, Mother of Gay. And then that's when I went to Salvador. I went to a concert, the Beyonce concert, and that's what I wanted to live. That's where I wanted to be at that time. So I called my mother to say I didn't want to come back. And she said, okay, there's one condition for you to be there. You have to study. You can't stop studying. And then I found the African Oriental Center of Studies, which is a graduate center of the Federal University of Bahia. And the enrollment period was over, but I talked to the coordinators, so I was able to be as a listener student in the master's program. So it's condition that my mother had put to us, that her 3 children, we had to study. So whatever it was. So afterwards, I studied other subjects as a special student. And then I started working in a program inside this center, CEAFRO, was coordinated by Black women. So there's the sociologist Vilma Reis, the journalist Célia Santos. And in this program, I started working in the crossroads of rights. So this crossroads is always in our way. It was a program that talks about, we worked with victims of domestic violence, Black women. And I also started working with film, with this institutional media. Then I went to the private sector, and I wasn't able to stay there a lot of time. I had to leave because I understood that I had to this expanded time of reproduction is different. So that was when we started developing the documentary Casa do Homem Errado, House of the Wrong Man, that talks about the extermination of the Black youth. We're talking about our experiences, and we understood that filmmaking would be the tool to fight racism. And it was a documentary that took us 8 years to be able to produce. So we started thinking about it in Rio Grande do Sul. I went to Salvador. In Salvador, we tried several ways how to make this project viable, try public notices, sponsoring, crowdfunding campaigns, and then we started doing it independently. And this production turned into a feature film, and then it turned into our way of being and working inside filmmaking. We launched it in 2016, and the idea of it was to be a short film. It became a feature film, and in the specific case of Rio Grande do Sul, where Júlio César, a uh, young black man, was executed by the security forces of the state for being black. And we bring this episode uh, with the current data. And from that, in 2017, we started having a series of hardships to circulate with this film. This was one of the topics that we talked about this morning in the exhibit: how to make these films get to the audience, how to make the access and the exchange happen. So from this moment on, I started to dedicate myself to work in filmmaking, to have this position as a Black person, as a Black filmmaker working in filmmaking and talking about Black subjects. So we see ourselves in this crossroads with this path. So we launched the film in Porto Alegre, in the Democratic corner. Everyone knows this area, for those who know this area, and that is a crossroad. So we met at that point, at that spot. We invited the Black community that supported us at that time. We had banners saying that Black Lives Matter. We went to the movies in the town. So we marched to the movie theater, understanding that these possibilities of these crossings are magnificent, and that we can go through these paths. And how do we go through these paths? Understanding that filmmaking is a collective construction, and understanding that we have to take care of these narratives as originary people, as Black people who have helped to build this country, and how are we going to bring these shapes and these images to the screens and to these dialogues. So when we say that we're going to bring a case of extermination of Black youth, we are very worried about how we're going to put these bodies in the screen, because what is there already is not interesting to us. The violence is not interesting to us. What interests us is say that that person that was executed by the security forces of the state had a name and a last name. That people who are executed, they have names and last names, and they are a part of this society. We are part of this society. So it's important to understand that we cannot just survive. And we understood that this tool was very powerful, because when we started in 2017 to circulate this movie, sorry, I cry rivers. Sorry. And this is going to work. Okay. We'll make it. So and that's it. And this body that it's in movement, and this expressed in several ways. So in 2017, when we started to have all the hardships to circulate the movie, and we started to work professionally only in filmmaking, and because until that point we produced a lot. Since 2008, we had produced a lot in that area, but we have produced with our colleagues. But we kept producing with colleagues, but also understanding that there was a film industry in this country, and that we were not inserted in that industry. And that industry, there's funding, and how could we how could we fund our work with this funding? Because if our minds are not same to produce, how can we do it? We produced it independently. It took us 8 years. We've been 4 years distributing the movie independently, but we can't take the money from our pocket, and we don't even have it. So if there's an industry, as a movie, a film industry, how can we be inside this industry? So we started to work and decide to also how to get inside this machine. And from that on, we started to understand how this works more or less. We started producing other films. We started wanting to be with our people, Black women. Our latest production is a short film called Mother Solo, about our experiences. And when we put something on the screen, we are putting our experiences, and we're putting our our experiences working with Black women, a Black crew, and with funding. And from that on, we started circulating with the movie. And nowadays, we understand that we needed to have several records to compete in this industry. So we have a distributor that is a distributor specialized in identitary content. And that is important because we have realized what our hardship was. And so the access to our movies gets to the audience. So when it got to the audience, we had an audience. So we made a distribution throughout a year in the commercial circuit. So the movie theaters throughout the country. And all the movie theaters, we had audience. So we had to promote. So there was access. When we promoted, we had a full room as it is today. So when we promote the event like this big, like this one, the room is full because people are interested in discussing. People are interested in talking about these matters and thinking about a world where it is possible for us to be inserted. So for us to start this dialogue, I think thinking about filmmaking and thinking about this way of Black and Indigenous women, very powerful in our body, inserted our mind, everything, the whole body inserted in these productions you will see. And if these productions can dialogue with you, there is a lot that we put of ourselves, that we put into the work. And when there is this putting into it, we think of what we can do for a more possible world. So I think that to begin with, that's it. I don't know if I have answered. I don't know if I ran from the question. No, no, you haven't run. I have also felt deeply, and it's about that. It's not about the way I elaborate hard words. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. But filmmaking, art, history, people who are here, and I believe they have this desire. Camila Maria works and she produces images from what she writes, words, samba, and she also brings it's a production of image. And image is not just image as we know, and it's not just me who says that. There's a lot of white Europeans who say that, but African people and indigenous already said that before. It's about denying a given shape, a way of saying and communicating to find new ones. So, and you use your Black body, your power to that. So my self-description, I'm a Black woman. I have curly hair. It's it's a it's a turban. It's a yellow and red turban. A black shirt, black skirt, and white shoes. So first of all, I'd like to thank the event organization. I live in the community of Montserrat, right next, close to this theater, and to put down the walls of the university, get to the city center where the Quilombo communities is very important. because most of the times we Black people, we only access when we go through the entrance exams. And I went through the entrance exams, also through affirmative actions in the law course. And being here and have the possibility to be close to my community, talking about in the academic field, also in this space, for me is very important. So thank you so much to the organization. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. I believe that my main crossroads is bringing the features of art to within law. I research the right to memory from cultural heritage, and I started within the samba school project, the samba school that's inside my community, and I started seeing, well, how I'm going to take this art to the academic area. When I started my law studies, I thought, how am I going to bring my culture here? Because that's what I'm going to talking about. So the rights there are in the Constitution. Are they being put into practice? So from this moment on, from this awakening, I started my research and I researched deeply the samba schools in Rio de Janeiro, their roots, and I brought the laws, the acts, and in comparison to the music, the dance, the culture, and everything that our ancestors have told us until nowadays. And I also, in parallel, entered in Nosso Olhar, the company Nosso Olhar, because it was through art and culture and dance and music in the summer schools that I took the initiative to experience the Nosso Olhar company, which was a deconstruction of what would be this way that the art industry creates about the actors and actresses. Well, they launched, for example, a casting test, and we want to deconstruct that. From the moment that we put Black people to be tested from the outside the door, we are tested every day, every time. So when we started launching, when we launched it, we wanted to deconstruct that. We're not here to be tested. We are here to live, to experience, to identify ourselves. So in the first moment I entered, I saw this kind of promotion and I wanted to be there. And differently from a regular test, you had to present yourself to the casting directors, all you know how to do. The Nosso Olhar company, it didn't have its name yet, but we seek to work and get to know people. Throughout 2 whole days, people were able to share their art, their music, their experience, their history. And starting with these meetings, what was the cast of Tarzan UK was launched in the stage. We brought 14 Black actors, and it was very beautiful. It was very meaningful, because this theater, before being Taki, it was called Princesa Isabel. So well, it starts here. So yeah, we came from this evolution. So do we need to deconstruct? So we started, we used this space, and from that on, we presented in 2019. There was a pandemic in the beginning of 2020, and our idea was just to participate with this launch, with this play. But with the pandemic and with the social isolation, we saw that we identified a lot that rehearsal, being together, trying to make the play happen, made us come together, unite, and we didn't want to separate because there was that environment of strengthening and identification. So the first weeks of the pandemic, which we didn't know what to do, how long we were going to be in that situation, we decided to have online meetings using study proposals. So I started studying Blackness, researching, bringing articles, films, and online through video conferences. We had our meetings, and that woke that idea. So why don't we create the Nosso Olhar company? Why don't we promote it? And why don't we try to do other work? And so the play was called Tarzan, A New Gaze. And it's interesting because we changed, instead of being Novo Olhar, New Gaze company, we're not bringing anything new. We're talking about ourselves, our experiences. So our message is not new. It's something that is being conveyed for a long time. So it's called Our Gaze. So from that, so when we started with Baptized Our Gaze, we started using the laws of simulation of culture and public notices to make turn display into a movie. So when we were contemplated with the public notice of the Aldir Blanc law, even so, the budget was very low, and we started to meet people who were eager to bring credibility to this work. And going a bit back, before we launched as a play, it was very hard to find this credibility. No one believed that we were going to be here to bring this theater to maximum capacity. We had to pay it ourselves. It was an initiative that had no support, no kind of funding. So from the moment that we launched, we showed our power. And so when we launched the movie, we had other partners and more. So in the year 2021, we had online rehearsals, and with some other more ideas of what the pandemic was. We also have equipment. We could also, with the funding of the public notice, we could buy the security equipment, masks, so we could have the COVID test for everyone. Because in addition to the 14 actors, we had a big production crew. So we had this simulation of the law. So if we don't have that, sometimes we can't take our ideas, our message, and work forward. So it's very important.
So we launched it in November 2021, the movie. We have a partnership with Barrera Mall, in which we're able to do a pre-launch of the movie, pre-screening. It's also here downtown, closer to that. And there's one of the largest movie rooms in Florianopolis, but this time we're able to take our family to the movies. So our mothers, our fathers, our family members, they're able to see us in a movie screen, and how important that was, because there's Leandro Bates who's going to talk afterwards, who's actually going to perform, and he's going to do something for us. And his mother was at the start of the movie giving her testimony. And for us, it was very touching, because we could never imagine that we would be there looking and seeing things. And so our movie was launched, and then There was a public launch online. The movie was announced. Everything was done free of charge, of course, and in partnership with other people. So after that, we had another movie. I think it was shown earlier today. Yeah, Dona Jacinta, that talks about Black women and their hair and how important it is for us to identify ourselves. Yeah, she's around. Yeah, she was there. And she says how long it took for her to be okay with her hair. It took more than 20 years because we were in a society that belittles us, and it's a solitude matter. And she came to understand the power of her hair when we got together. You know, our outlooks were all together because she saw that she was not alone. She was together with people who were also struggling. So these are the crossroads that to us, they make all the sense in the world. If you respect our bodies, you respect the lives of people and their journeys, to know that we cannot test them, to know that we can put our fathers and children on the screen of a movie, and to take audiovisual based on an identification of a self-narrative, which is so important. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Camila. Very powerful, right? And it moves us because what these four women talked about is very important. And I insist it's important in terms of having concrete change. We're talking about concrete experiences. It's not just theory without practice. And we're not excluding theory. What we want to say is that cinema wants to propose practice, well, feminine movie. And now I have to open a parenthesis here. I was not supposed to be here. Professor Louisa needed to leave. And now we saw that she's here, but she had an issue. It's always like that in events, right? There are a few problems and people need to solve them. And then I took this part here because the correct thing would be for Professor Louisa to be here, because it was supposed to be all women, but you know, things happen. And so that's why I'm here. But I did not identify myself. I am a Black man, no hair. I have a beard. I have a white T-shirt of the event and jeans and red tennis. I apologize. I did not know that I was going to speak here. But I think, in any case, I think just like Louisa, very similar. And with Louisa and not everyone, and also people from the Aya and Claudio and everyone, you know, this is what we want with this event. In what way are we going to think about Crossroads? How can we answer the questions? Because we're bringing questions, we're bringing issues to the table. When Patricia talks about experience in São Miguel das Missões, when Sandra says, because for me, you're immersed in this sea, which is Lamar, and it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be like that. So Professor Denise Ferreira says that we can be between the cosmic and the quantic. I'm not going to be here in the theoretical explanation about this. The response is in the ancestrality, really, because it brought the Tenaki thought, right? The future is ancestral, and I could not mention this. And I'd like to hear from you, Patricia, because the future is in the ancestrality. And if it is, how can we get there? Because it's about where we want to go. The future is something that's already there. What never was is about now, is about the present. So it's a bit about a past. It can also be here without passing by our experience. And, you know, I lived for a while in São Miguel with my indigenous brothers, and I learned a lot from them, especially to find my ancestrality. And I came to conclude that here in Santa Catarina State. So I'd like to hear from you, Patricia, and then we can listen to the girls talk about ancestrality and how they feel. And then I'm going to say something else afterwards. Please, Patricia. I'm not used to sitting on this fancy chair. Yeah, I've also learned a lot by working with movies. When audiovisual, this tool to work with the cinema, when this tool found me, after that, I learned a lot, especially about more spiritual matters. The elders, especially the elder women, when we began to work with images, we had to explain a lot of things to them, how images work, the way we understood them, the audiovisual that we had at the time, because it was a new tool that was entering the tribe, especially my indigenous tribe, which is in a historical municipality. But the people who are there, they talk about the old times, the history that happened. And we who are there now, all the time, on a day-to-day lives, selling our arts and crafts, were not mentioned. So I learned the history, how my ancestors lived at their time, and also how our language is maintained, the chants, the sacred. And when they started talking, I had a questioning because when we started working with this, who came, let's say, without fear to be in front of a camera, men were the ones who stood in front of the cameras. The older men, they talked to us and they were there. But the women, they were a bit suspicious. They did not want to show. They did not want to say anything and leave their testimony. And I wanted to understand what was happening. So I started to work a lot more on these issues for women and to try to bring them to be able to film them. And that's when I understood how much the women protect our language and our education. And that's why the women were suspicious, because they said, where am I going to be heard? Who is going to listen to me talking? So the talk of Ailton Krenak is very pertinent because they are the ones from our ancestry, and we are here alive and strong. So they are the ones who brought courage to fight day after day to educate our children, our grandchildren. So it's because of these thoughts, when I think about what Ailton said. So we, the women, we are the ones who are the warriors, and we fight to keep our culture alive. I'm not saying anything bad about men, but those are the ones who have always been at the forefront. And when I leave my village, I'm always asked, why are the men the ones who show up more in the cities and as leaders? And so they ask us that. What about women? And I was shocked by these questions because when I'm in the village and when I'm there, the women are the ones who participate. The women are the ones who make things happen in my tribe. So it's just a matter of care. And the Guarani women, especially, they have that. They have this special zeal. And I learned a lot. And I think it's important to keep that and to care for that and to bring their speech and their talks in on screen from these women. Are you producing something at the moment? Yes. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was pregnant with Dionísio, and we filmed a short film about how women, especially Guarani women, how do they deal with pregnancy, especially in the pandemic. So there's reflection in the pandemic. The last movie that we did was this one. It's a short film. The name is The Spirits Keep on Coming. They're circulating everywhere on the festivals. And now there's a fiction that talks a little bit about this. We hope we can complete it at the end of the year or at the start of next year. It's been difficult because we lack the resources. That's what the girls were mentioning. Sometimes we use our own money, but sometimes we can't do that. So we extend this deadline. And so we're always working on something, we're always creating. That's what I had to say. Who would like to say something? You can choose for yourselves. Feel free to do that. Go ahead, Adriano. No, because, you know, what we're discussing, Camila talked about, I forgot the expression, expanded time, I think. Because, and you know, I'm trying to link that to what everybody else mentioned, because I think it's interesting that we're thinking about an image as a potential to change the experience of the historic being, the historic living, what can change my perception. So I am exposed to the movie of any one of you four. And after that, there's a proposition, and I can change a paradigm. And that's different from when I watch a Hollywood movie, because the proposition is for me to leave the movie theater and buy something and forget my life while I'm there. So we have a few matters to think about. And so what do you mean when you talk about this expanded time? What's the movie proposing? In what way this time relation, you know, maybe it gets a bit complex, but I'd like to bring this here. In what way this time relation that movie proposes is the doorway to past ancestry? Because the matter is, ancestry needs to incorporate into this filmic matter, and the spirit that Patrice is talking about is only going to circulate if, you know, it's like the Purple Rose of Cairo, you know, it leaves the screen. It's not about what's going to go in, right? It's not about what I see, it's about what sees me. So you four are in this key in my reading. What you do looks at us. Many things, right? Yeah, I know, but it's all right. Well, as someone who's compulsive by images, I absolutely understand that I do what I do because I have a visceral need to do that. It's my soul, it's my spirit. And, you know, we're here to fulfill the dream of our ancestors, right? And it's a rediscovery of our ancestors, and that moves us to take us to new worlds, because we're here to invent a new world, because we're fed up with this world, right? Because this invention is a lie. It's fascist, it's chauvinistic, and it's devastating of all of our lives, internal and external ones. So that's it. And for me, that's very serious. And at this time in which we are at this crossroads, so enough, enough. It's perverted. And it costs lives. So what I feel from this crossroads is our mental health, our perseverance, public policies, all of that moves us because we have several projects here. But there was a deviation of more than 2 billion reais from our fund for culture that did not get to anyone because it went to this secret budget of the government. And this is wicked because everybody is in food insecurity. For example, I was left without a home with this fascism, but I'm much better off than a lot of other people because we have where to go. What about who does not? And that's majority. This is a crossroads. So I think we won many things, but we still have a long way to go. And the cinema, the arts, education, healthcare, and effective micropolitics have to do. And so going back to the movies, because all of this is cinema, I always joke around about this because it's been a long time in which I've been saying that I started making movies because life is a movie, right? Each one of us has a history and has a story to tell. This is cinema, this is movie. So, you know, so to me, this is freeing because I am someone who is from the praxis. Practice, I learn by doing. I'm a self-taught woman. I tried 2 universities and they could not stand me. They kicked me out, literally. So I don't have a degree, but I am an executive because I have a company and I've had that for 18 years. But I don't have this commercial habit because it's not me. I want to do movies, I want to film, but it's unbearable because we make an effort. And why? Because the resources are not for us. And we do not eat grass. I love cows, but we need a roof over our heads and a bed to sleep. And when I have that, I'm like, oh, thank God. And that's the reality. And look, I am a privileged person. I'm here, right? I'm here representing women, Black women from Santa Catarina State. I was born here, and I'm a daughter of white mother and fascist because these subjectivities were corrupted by a historical matter. And we know that it's a narrative of domination that I no longer stand. And I suppose a lot of us don't. And we get emotional when we talk about this one exterminated life. In some place in us, it's also a wound. So what I've come to realize is that we need to repair traumas. I've been repairing internal traumas because all of this politics in the world, they affect me directly, and we're not aware of that many times. But I thank the production of academic knowledge because it helps me understand and to name a few things. And for example, with the feminist movement, I realized that I was born a feminist because my mother, poor thing, she couldn't handle it because I could not be classified. I was not able to be submitted to anything that was imposed. So I say that the rebellion saved me because I needed to say no to a lot of things and to fight for a lot of things so that I could be here in this place which I love. I love being an artist and making movies and being an activist, and to support movements in the communities, the traditional communities. I have Gabriela Pieroni here, who's a historian, who's my sister, a partner, a companion in the audiovisual studies, and she opens the doors for this place in which we are, which is this amazing knowledge that in this system that has been imposed to us, there's no value, and that is a lie. That's why we've been saying for centuries because we have this lie everywhere in the society. So I thank Gabi for that. I love going to the communities. That's a place which I love because people, they're the most spontaneous people. They're not afraid of me. Children just jump to the camera and they get them, and that's amazing. because that's breathing cinema and audiovisual, and I love that. And so my way of making movies is very particular. I sent a link that's 3 minutes, maybe that can translate a bit of what I do and how I do things, and who are these people like Gabi who are involved in these processes. And we make fiction, and actually, what is fiction and what's reality, right? I mean, we start to talk and everything stops. We don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is what we do. We are accomplished by doing that, and we are resisting with our narratives, and we're going to meet ourselves again, and we're going to acknowledge ourselves again, and we get involved with it, this amazing and important sector. And without heart, I don't know if life has any meaning. And do we have this link so that we can play and show the video? Does anybody have that? It's the first link that I sent. It's called, well, anyway, if you don't have that, it's okay. It's just because it's a picture. It's a small picture of this contemporary moment in which I'm living. We are about to launch a long film, fiction, Mares do Desterro, that won an award from a Ministry of Culture that did not exist anymore. And we won an award. I was like, what? I mean, that's a lie, right? But no, it's true. We can only celebrate when we have money in our bank accounts, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can only do that because you have awards that don't pay. So this is a lack of respect, right? So we have this project. Well, it's not a project. It's actually a movie that was shown but not launched. It's a low budget award from the Ministry of Culture because that was all extinct. Let's see if it's going to come back in the new administration because we're here to ask for it now, right? Because we voted for someone, but now we have to ask for something because it seems to me that we're moving forward. So what happens is we got this award in 2018, I think, from this movie, Mares do Desterro, project from 2013. It's a script that has 10 years. The script arrived already for me. And, I like to prepare the movie, because we are always short on funds. And I love a movie set. So we prepare a lot. I have amazing friends and crazy friends because they can just go with it. And there's no money that pays for that, right? Because that's love. That's pure love. They invest in us, right? They believe in us. And so this is very important. And people are very much qualified. And so I was able to gather an amazing group of friends. And so this doing for me a movie, all of that, it's in when you make things and we can see the movie together. And we launched it last year in Sao Paulo, and it was very important to us. And we saw ourselves on screen. We were there with the directors, the cast, 6 people, including the children. And it was amazing, to see ourselves. And you come to understand how you did things. No, it's not this one. This one is from the website. I sent a specific one for the presentation. If you want to go, I'm talking about this movie in particular because it's a movie about resistance, because it takes a while for us to make a movie, but the movie is ready. It's on screen, and we know how much we had to work. And for me, this micro politics of doing things, that's revolutionary. Because when I say, a producer, 18 years doing that, not working with commerce, I realize that I am an anti-capitalist person. I'm not doing that for the money. I'm doing that for self-accomplishment. It's something about me and with the sector that we're interested in. And we have what to say, right? What do we want? I mean, it doesn't matter. But anyway, it seems to me that it does. So for me, that's important, how you do things, because it's a movie about women in leadership, which is something rare as a director and a photographer of the movie. It's also rare because we are a minority in directing. And in photography, I mean, I'm not even talking about that. So I had this courage because you have to have that because we're always running the risk and we're always in, about waiting for something bad to happen, right? Because sometimes the criticism does not consider all of that, the pressure that we had to go through to be where we are, right? Right? We know that, right? In the academia, for example, Bahia is something else. We know that, right?
I worked in the 90s. I had a work this about the ethnic groups in Santa Catarina, and I had the meeting with the director. They're just European guys, and I thought, oh, what about black people and indigenous people? Oh, no, no, they spent fortunes, public money, advertisements for the government at the time, PMDB, I don't remember. They didn't include Black and indigenous people in from Santa Catarina. That was a shame. But I was so glad that 2 weeks after that, when it was aired, the Black movement was there and they put it down. And then we can see how important it is to resist, because otherwise they will go all. And I'll stop speaking because if it's not here, we just go on. You said something that happened to me. I was born close to the sea. My films have something I love Iemanjá. I have a relationship that's I have a very special relationship with the sea. That's why Lama is online. It's in the first virtual cinema exhibit. You can get into the websites. There are over 50 movies that by Patricia, Camila, Sandra. So if you access the website, will be at till the end of the event. If you're at home, you can watch them. They are available online, and you can also find them afterwards if you can see them through during the event. So to finish, I wanted to say that. So when I think about this decolonial nature, that is wonderful when to think about it. When we look to praxis and think about doing things different, and so we won't reproduce the tradition when we don't think about hiring slaves. Doing different has this political sense. It's a new construction of relationships, of engagement. I want to work with my friends. We have intimacy. So this is beautiful. It's not exploitation, but the sector, the industry is like this. So it doesn't make us want to work in this industry. We want to work in our own projects, independent projects, to be an activist, to contribute, because that's what I do. I contribute in resistance with what I have, my images I have. And so I go, and that's activism. I'm not paid. I paid sometimes to be, and I'm proud to do that. I don't do advertising because I don't believe, I can't, I don't want to sell lies. I can't. There are many things. So, but anyway. Oh yeah, I would really like to show you this this short video, the 3-minute video, but it's also on the website. Well, okay, Camila, I'm trying to follow up on this. Sandra mentioned this politics, but we always have this subject of the time of the body, theater, films. The theater, the time is a bit different, I think. I'm asking, actually. I'd like to listen what you have to say about the subject. We're trying to think here, this expanded time, politics. So it's very nice to think when you're thinking about time expansion, we're talking about politics. And expanding time means expanding it within the time. So you have to conquer more space that's taken from us. In the sense that I'd like to hear you. Okay, so I think a lot about and that in these spaces that are taken from us, we are always treated as the other. And from the time that we are treated as the other, there's something or someone else in the center when we are put in the margin. So there's a quote uh, in this Memories of Plantation from another author, um, Nueto Simon. He says that in this white world, I feel like uh, a river fish swimming in the ocean. And in what moment this other space, this way to treat the other, we feel we end up being in a way of in a space of strangeness, always like swimming against the flow. And we're not the strangers in the space. Our ancestrality shows a lot about it. You're just not occupying this other space because there's someone else trying to have this domain, trying to take the resources away from us, to erase our history. But I think we come from a process of affirmation and occupation that is very important, not only to our ancestors for representation, but the others yet to come. And we see that a lot with the the Tarzan New Gaze, the film. All main actors are black. And Tarzan, we call Yakan because Tarzan means white skin. So we deconstruct that by changing the name of the main character. So we are always in schools debating with kids, and we see black kids very um emotional talking about it. And back to what I said, seeing our relatives in the screen, taking our image. And so we are reaffirming to the next generations yet to come, that it is normal that we can be in the spaces, occupying the spaces. We have to make it natural and show these kids that in these spaces, they're not outliers. They're not there on their own. We see several actors, Lázaro Ramos, Viola Davis. We see several actors that are on TV. They are on film for several years, but sometimes they have the lead role, but a lot of times, like as outliers, they're the only ones there. So from the moment that in which we can see one another en masse and show the kids that we are a majority, we are able to move our bases. We can create a more powerful generation. And I saw that a lot by watching the launch of Black Panther 2 and Wakanda Forever. A lot of people crying in the movie theater, not only for the message of the movie, but also the image in film, see and recognize and know that this representation is important for us. And so, and this being able to reach all generations, all our descendants, ascendants, I think that's it. I don't know, Camila, but this issue that Camila brought about filmmaking, thinking Hollywood. So I see Viola Davis, I see Black Panther, and I see myself. But I see myself in a specific narrative structure. I don't know if it liberates me or if it prisons me. But if I say films as Patricia's, Yours, Sandra, etc., so forging a different representation, trying uh, to open this structure. I don't know if I'm able to express myself, but talking about these topics you've talked about, solo matter, I know there's this perspective. So one thing is, if we see ourselves represented in something else, it's like Hall says, the segregated visibility. I'm visible, but still my body is being segregated. Viola Davis is wonderful, but I've heard several criticisms, especially coming from African people. So we have to think about if this kind of film liberates us or if it imprisons us more. So I don't know. I think these are very complex discussions. We are expressing ourselves in a world that we are creating paths. We are here as Brazilian women, and we're talking about our vision inside Brazil, where we experience this. And then there's another structure, which is Hollywood, another structure, which is worldwide, and that reaches people. And how does it reach people? What's the access we have to that? So these are complex discussions and discussions that um, we have to understand the positive sides of the importance of these segments, importance of having Black Panther, of having a continuity of this film, the importance of that makes it here in Brazil produce in a different way. That's not that way. It's our way to do what is ours, what is here, and how we're going to relate to that. So I think these are different realities in different proportions. And here we're talking about Black women producing, and most of them producing independently, and how we are being able to dialogue with these other people, which is as important as that, and how we're having this kind of access. And thinking about all that the other lady said here, I think it's important to bear in mind when you talk about filmmaking, when we're being able to express ourselves with these narratives, beyond expressing ourselves, to be able to visualize this powers. If we have an exhibit, if people are producing, we have to go there, watch, to be together, to see what this whole academic production that comes with the critics, where the text comes and reflects in these works. We only be able to understand when we're there watching, when we actually stop and watch and dive into the work and think, oh, okay, this is being done differently. It's not what I was thinking. I think that's the most beautiful part of film and TV. We produce in one way and it reaches people in a different way, and we create several possibilities. So these several possibilities of paths, we will only be able to create them if we relate to people. If we have an exhibit today and the room was full, if we talk about that, if these movies are online, we have to go there and watch them. If we're here producing and we have a movie club, we have to go to the square and watch the movies. So we are talking about a premiere at the cinema, the mall. We have to go there and watch, because that's going to make us keep producing. That's going to make us keep making the reflections that we bring here. And after we watch the work, we will reflect more. And after the movie today, there were several people talking about it, and they said that the time wasn't enough for a debate, so that we could talk about it. But we'll only be able to talk about film. We would only be able to debate after watching the work. So the importance of understanding it. I don't know if we spend years to be able to put a project into practice, years to produce, we have to have this time also for talking and discussion and have nice spaces for this to happen. So I think this is happening in a magnitude that makes this have us to have a path that's not the Hollywood one, but it's the Brazilian film industry, made by several women. And if we're here today now, there's 4 women sitting talking, it's because we are producing for a long time. It's a lot of women that are producing. And and when we're producing, we're bringing a new perspective, a female perspective. If my perspective is of a Black person from Rio Grande do Sul, I can talk about anything, but it's my perspective that is passing the work that I'm producing, and it's going to dialogue with other people and people who are not Black, and it's a dialogue that goes beyond that. So I think we have to start to understand what is this Brazilian film industry and how we want to be located in this society. And then start to evaluate what are our powers and how we're going to put ourselves in the society and start to understand our past, where we come from, what crossroads we can walk in, where we can get to, and then we can find the interesting ways. I was thinking here, so a proposition for you. I think you should produce a film, the 4 of you. I felt this very strong energy connection. So this is my hint. So I'll open to questions here for people to participate. I imagine that there are several questions. You want to listen more to them, make more questions. So please, you can use the microphones, or I can lend you my microphone. Please feel free to ask. This is a very rich moment. It's important for us to be able to dialogue with this 4 women, this very powerful women. This is a rare opportunity. I'm very emotional here. I'm controlling myself while you speak. I didn't listen. One? Okay. Okay. So I'd like to ask the 4 of you, but if one of you specifically, so about the pandemic, how it was to you that work with arts, with film, to deal with the pandemic. I was talking with my neighbor that worked in dance, how it affected her psychological health and other matters in her life. I'd like to know about you, how it was, in addition to social issues, how it was this moment, this 2 years before now. Thank you. Well, for me, our company, it was very hard, not only due to the isolation issues, but also because we're already in the process of being together, of interacting, meeting in person, and we're already in the community process. But when the pandemic arrived, we automatically migrated to online meetings and video conferences. But our projects were previously all theater based. So we had to adapt our projects to film, like Tarzan became a movie. Dona Jacinta also was produced during the pandemic, was our latest movie. Não Corre Menino, which is the play that we're going to present here. It's a monologue. It's also by our company. It was launched during the pandemic, online. So in theater, the Céu da Palhoça Theater, we were able to shoot and stream it online. So we participated with the play that was shot at several festivals in São Paulo, in Bahia, Rio Grande do Sul, in Rosario, in Mexico. So we had to adapt theater to film and TV. So I had these two perceptions. Have Não Corre Menino as an audiovisual production, which was our first contact of the public with this production. And now have it in person, on stages and everything. And people who have watched it previously and now are watching it in person for the first time tell us the difference impact. We come from theater, from this contact, this close contact with the audience. So we had to adapt, but we did. So in order to be able to dialogue in, through a pre-production, a strong pre-production, that in addition to screenplay constructions, online rehearsals, we had to think about a way to make these shootings viable, but we couldn't. We were able to make it. Yeah, I was very scared when I knew about the pandemic. I was finishing my feature film. I was exhausted. During 3 months, I stopped everything because there is the isolation, there was the severity, the global sanitary crisis. But the movie, we bought some time for the movie, so we were able to have post production with a longer time. So there was this gain, especially for the quality, people working with more time. So sound edition, mixing, there are a lot more details in this process. So we could understand that this time in the pandemic contributed to the final outcome of the movie. But besides that, I was isolated completely. I live in the Solitude Beach, so it's very, very peaceful. I live in solitude. We play, we joke, but it's actually I'm very scared when I see lonely multitudes. When we think about loneliness, that the one that hurts, I'm very scared about this lonely multitude. But these are things that we think about the world. Anyway, the film got this higher quality because of the time. The time resource was important, and I complied with all the protocols that I had to. I think this is a political act. It's very nice to see her in the mask. I never had COVID. I isolated a lot. So, so respecting the collective and ourselves. So I created a lot. The projects go on. We lost a lot of rights to access the funds. The sectorial fund almost went bankrupt. The emergency funding was very important for us. So, like it was for science, this blockages were a failure, but the pandemic made us think and reflect a lot. The importance of keep doing things. I want to work with Black actresses because I have felt the need to bring people together. I'm usually the only Black woman, and my mother says I'm not Black. So it's complex. It's being there, fighting, and someone still cancels you. I mean, this system, everyone is intoxicated and with sexism because this is so old. It's ingrained in our existence. So this internal revolution, the pandemic, made me go through a lot of reflection, and so we're alive. Well, I think the pandemic, we're still living this process. In the self-description, I didn't mention it. I'm still wearing a mask, a face mask. And it was something very serious for health, collective health, mental health. Now, talking about the professional side, we had time to morph into this distributor, try understand the importance of working with distribution. We've been through the process of 3 years distributing the feature film inside and outside the country in commercial movie theaters, going to the list, shortlisted to represent the country in the Oscars. So going through all this trajectory to distribution, we had the time to understand, to have a company that worked with distribution and making this bridge to films of our people we know, maybe don't know, because now we work with other people as well. So we had this time to develop projects and have time to develop more projects. And it was very important. Now we have this distributor directed to film made by Black teams. And the importance for us to understand that we're working with Black professionals, most of them, and we produced a lot of short films. The importance of this genre in our production. We work with, we have to synthesize a story in a short span of time and dialogue with people, understand this potential in the short films. And we're working with that, being able to work with projects that make sense to us. We have developed a screenplay for a feature film, a documentary, to be able to talk about affection between Black people and understand the importance of what we are saying about this love, but that it can make us stay alive in such a chaotic world, in this world that we are fighting to reconstruct in this political scenario, and talking about this power of having access to this affection. And we are developing this project and also bringing another movie that's talking about ancestrality, about our walk. So thinking about this professional side, we had this time to mature and thinking about another line of action in film, which is what makes us happy and where we want to keep work with dignity as well.
Eu, pessoalmente, quando chegou a pandemia, eu também levei um susto, né? Principalmente porque a minha profissão é como professora, né? Então, chegou essa pandemia e de repente acaba, né, o público, que são as crianças com quem eu trabalhava, né, na época, e aí eu realmente fiquei perdida, assim, como é que eu vou trabalhar, como é que eu vou, o que eu vou fazer agora, né, que a escola...
What am I going to do now? Because the school
desculpa, que a escola, né, que além de trabalhar
because the school, in addition to working with audiovisual,
trazia essa vontade
the school brought this will for me to work with arts,
e de repente acaba isso, né? Então,
and maybe that ended. So for me,
começo assim
it
que
was a new start. And when the pandemic started, I had this time to think
feminino,
about the feminine body
comecei a desenhar muito assim, desenhar
because I started to draw a lot.
a minha avó naquele momento
Everything that my grandmother was saying right
falar, né?
at that moment, okay?
A escola assim, ela para nós, ela tirou
Because the school to us, it removed a bit of this talk
sempre tivemos, né? Porque
that we always had.
de manhã
Because I get up in the morning, I go to school, and my grandmother and my mother stay there. And in the pandemic, I had this opportunity of listening to my grandmother, the beautiful stories that she talks about when she drinks the mate, and this is part of our culture. And as a teacher, I was not
esse momento, né? Então eu nem
doing that. So I did not even realize that. And so during the pandemic, after a scare,
com ele,
to wake up and drink mate, yerba mate, with her, it was a new start for me to understand my body as a Guarani woman.
eu comecei
And so I started to draw a lot.
e depois veio um projeto,
And afterwards,
não sei se assistiram,
we had a project.
né, que
I don't know if you've watched Tequatin, a movie that I filmed with Sofia that talks a little about this meeting between indigenous women and non-indigenous women. It's a very intimate, it's a very beautiful movie. I don't know if you watched it.
esse filme era
So this movie was,
era para fazer
the main idea was to make a video carta.
difícil fazer
I was not able to say that.
por dois motivos,
It was hard for me to do that work for two reasons.
né? Mandar as imagens da minha
When I was going to send the images from my community, from the person to someone who's far away and did not know very well.
chamei ela para
And so I called her to go to my village and to see what comes out of that. And this movie was like that.
minha veio projeto
And so in the pandemic, there was a project from the Institute, Moreira Salles, in Rio,
videocarta com outras
to make a video letter with other filmmakers, other indigenous workers.
e aí então nisso eu não sabia muito bem o que
And in that, I did not know what it was going to show very well.
casa e aí então esse trabalho me deu
So this work
pensamento
gave me a new outlook, a new thought about that, to reflect more about my existence, my personal existence. So in the pandemic, that was it. I produced this video, I created this video, this letter video, and it's also showing.
são 16 vídeos,
And in total, we have 16 short films
né, junto com a
that we did that together with Graciela and Michele
são quatro
and Sofia, who are four women, and they're sending a letter. They're sending letters to each other during the pandemic.
nessa
So that's what I've done in the pandemic.
Alguém quer fazer mais alguma pergunta? Vários deles
Anybody?
levantados. Lá, professor.
Would anybody like to ask a question? I see several people here I don't know who raised their hands first. Can somebody organize the questions
Poder respeitar a ordem que as pessoas
so that we can respect the order in which people are asking the questions?
Sim, vamos fazer bloco de perguntas, então.
Yes, we're going to have time for questions now.
Boa tarde.
Excuse me, good afternoon.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon, women.
Vou tentar ser breve, porque eu sou bem palestrinha.
I'm going to try to be brief because I usually talk a lot. I like to give lectures, as I say. My name is Juliana. I am a professor who has a doctorate in drama, working with Black theater. So whenever we talk about arts and images, this is important to me. And an image that's introduced based on these places that affirm our identity. And during your talk, several points triggered me. I'm going to share a few of them with you, and they went through my head. We have no control over what people who are going to watch are going to feel. We can't control that. But at least in theater and also in cinema, there's a scenic truth, cinematography truth, cinematographic truth, and I'm speaking as an artist. If it makes sense about what we're doing, for sure it's going to make sense for someone who's going to watch. And so I kept thinking how to keep that truth, that cinema truth, alive when we are in view of a situation and a society that is extremely unequal, especially in material resources. For you to make movies for 8 years, 10 years, how many years of production? How do you eat during 8 years or 10 years as you're producing the film? So how do you support yourself and pay the professionals who are going to be with you? So we need to de-romantize this place for art. We know that art transforms and art cures and sets people free, but it's not a romantic place for us who are professionals, art professionals. We need to support ourselves in this capitalistic world. So how to keep this scenic truth in view of this chaotic structural place that's telling us all the time that we have questions and values, financial values, monetary values. So this is something that was in my mind and I'd like to share with you. And toward the end, I thought about the urgency of the production of meaning. We live in this urgency of meanings and senses for Black issues. And so when we talk about Crossroads, what are the meanings and senses that we artists, Black artists, men and women, original tribes and bodies, they're decolonial. What are the meanings and senses that we are generating in movies and theater? Because based on this meaning and sense that comes from images, we're going to talk about representation, and we're going to talk about representativeness, we're going to talk about Black positive identity. And this came a lot to me when you talked about Black Panther and the woman king. We are in the urgency of producing meanings about what does it mean to be Black, that, the entertainment can be this stigma trap. But at the same time, I keep thinking, it's the urgency that drives us, because we still don't have the right to laugh about our bodies or to think about other representations. I'd like to be able to have a Black body in entertainment and in the political engagement discourse and in the comic discourse and whichever, it wanted to be, but it's so urgent. And I told you that I like to talk a lot, right? And to give lectures. Sorry about that. Sorry. But I told you that before, because, it moves me to think about all of this. And well, it's so urgent that we watch Black Panther and we say, oh, okay, where are we there? Because the problem is, if we only have the Black Panther, because once again, we're going to fall into a colonial place. Black Panther is going to be a reference to say who we are. So I had that urgency in my mind. So what are the meanings that we are producing with our images? And lastly, just to finish, I'd like to ask you to share an ethical conflict, a Black ethics. I'd like a reference for a Black ethics because we know that the cinematography industry, the executive production, is in the hands of the whites. This is a fact. It's hegemonic. They dominate the market, either in the movies or theater. They are the rulers. So we are going to have to negotiate with them, right? So the question is, how do you have that? What happens there with our allies, with our Black allies? How up until when are we able, how far are we able, or you, producers, directors, women, creators, how far are you willing to negotiate with a white production? Or should we create our own? I mean, how's that like? Because, you know, it's, to change the script of a movie, for example, is that negotiable? You know, to reach millions and millions of Brazilians, or not? It's not negotiable. I'd like to hear from that, you know, this ethics of Black guerrilla, please. Thank you.
Quem mais? Vai fazer o bloco e aí depois as meninas se virem.
We're going to have the questions and then you're going to answer. Who else wants to ask? I am Fernando Oliveira. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I've learned a lot in this afternoon. I'm going to also try to be succinct, but it has, what I want to say has to do with what Juliana mentioned. I'd like to hear about how you identify the current crossroads in the movies produced by indigenous filmmakers and Black filmmakers in Brazil. A doubt that I have is, how have you observed if there is a relationship with the cinema that has been produced also from the same origin, but in other points in Latin America? Moving away from this colonial Hollywood logic, thinking if there is such a relation with people, indigenous people who produce movies in Latin America, especially in the Prata region. And a very brief justification is because I am a researcher and I research Uruguay, and I've researched how Uruguay and Argentina are in this Latin American context, but Brazil does not. It seems like we are something apart from Latin America. So I'd like to hear from you about that, and thank you so much. Once again, and then we have 3 questions, otherwise we're going to have too much and we won't have time. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Gabriela. I am from the State University of Rio. It's the first time that I'm here in the event, so I'm very touched. Thank you so much for this space. I'm learning a lot, truly. And I study history, so the understanding about time is very interesting to me. And I'm also not from cinema and movie area, so since this morning, I'm learning new concepts, and I was very interested in this expanded time concept, and I'd like to ask you, what would be this perception of time for each of you? And and also the moderator can comment on that as well. And it's very simple. That's it. What would be this time for you? Not only the time of production, but also the time of existence. Thank you. Thank you. We can start. Feel free to begin. Oh, would you like to ask a question? Somebody else? Go ahead. Just briefly, thank you so much. Thank you, Andri. You called me, and then, you know, the bureaucracies of the event. I'm very happy to come here, to be here, and I arrived in such a rush to watch your lectures. Thank God the ones who asked before already mentioned things that I wanted to hear. And in terms of language and narrative, the power of these movies made by indigenous women, Black women, as language and narrative that pierce the threads of gender and colonialism and all that. And I was thinking, can you give an example of scenes? I was imagining a few of them in the Coletivo Enviar Guarani de Cinema, and also in terms of time and the audience. I remember very well when Ariel Ortega told me once, talking about the intentions of the Duas Aldeias, Uma Caminhada, a movie, and he told me, the white people, they're very ignorant about our story. It's not just our story, it's our collective story from Brazil. And that's how this movie came about. But other movies have other intentions, other audiences, the intention to reinforce this identity within the community, and as a language and time, since the historians are here, right? Historians discussing the matter of time. I also remember the first scene of Bicicletas de Anderu, one of the first movies of the Guarani collective cinema production. And there's a funny story to tell. Every time I watch this story with students, it's strange for them at first because there's no chronological time, like fast time. It's an expanded time, ancestral time, relational time. I still don't know how to name that, this decolonial aesthesis, but it's an ancient time who looks at us, looks at the camera for a minute. And a minute feels like eternity to us, but it's very few for us to be able to look at that character, for that storm that's coming, for what is he's saying, and to sit down together with these people who are not just characters in a script that's preconceived, but they're building all of that together. And then he starts to talk about things very slowly. And a student told me once, "Oh, teacher, I thought there was a problem with the movie, and I paused it, and I was like, oh, good." He kept on insisting and watching, and then after that, he watched many indigenous movies, and he started to understand a bit this matter of time. So it's also an opportunity for the audience, the non-indigenous audience, to watch movies that touch them and provoke them, and sometimes even make them uncomfortable. That's also very important. So to think about examples of new language, historical narratives that are new and that deal with time and tell other stories about these Black and Indigenous women are protagonists and evidently not represented by others, and others are the white people. And they're not Indigenous, and they're not Black women who are producing this audiovisual feed. So just an opportunity to hear from you a little bit more. Thank you so much.
O silêncio foi a primeira coisa que existiu.
Silence was the first thing there was. Yes?
Infelizmente, a gente vai ter que encerrar o tempo, então você pode fazer.
We're going to have to end our time. You can ask one more question. We cannot hear without the microphone.
Lidem com isso tudo agora.
Deal with all of it now.
Meu Deus.
Oh boy.
Nossa, então,
Well, I mean,
assim como é uma reflexão, né,
it's a reflection
que agora estão vindo, né, principalmente dos mais velhos,
that is coming now, especially
né,
from
essa sua pergunta,
older
porque
women and people, because as I said, in the pandemic, I found something that I had not realized.
sonhos que era
You
muito
know,
importante
to
para as
listen to the dreams. That was very important for older people to hear people's dreams when they wake up and they tell their dreams. And, you know, people sometimes don't even know what that dream is for. And so at this time, when I sat down drinking my mate, my grandma, by means of her dreams, she already saw that I was going to be pregnant. And all of this is registered, is recorded in my drawings.
Então, a minha questionamento
And my question was precisely that:
eu como professora, eu
how I, as a teacher, asking for help from the elders to think together, how can we do that?
como te responder isso, porque eu também
So I cannot answer that because I am also at this time thinking in terms of my own experience.
e é isso assim, mas o que a gente
And that's it. But what we've talked about,
os meninos que trabalham com audiovisual,
especially the boys working with audiovisual pieces, they believe
próximas para
that the closest that they got to strengthen the talks was audiovisual, because we work in school with children, and the elders talk that not necessarily is from our village. They are talks from old people in other villages in other countries, and that they call Argentina and Paraguay, and they come to our children
muito importante esse
who
conhecimento. Que chegam através do audiovisual, né, para
really
nós.
need this
Então, acho
knowledge,
que
and which is very important to
é
us.
isso que eu tenho que falar
So I think
sobre a tua pergunta,
that's what I have to say about your question. And
porque eu não esqueci da pergunta
I did not forget
da moça ali da
the
palestra.
other person's question, the one who said that likes to give speeches.
Eu tive uma
I
experiência,
had
né, com como que
an
a gente pode
experience
negociar nesse roteiro
about how to negotiate the
com
script
indígenas,
with
principalmente.
non-Indigenous people in particular.
Na pandemia surgiu
During the pandemic,
né, entrou uma pessoa assim para
someone
uma consultoria, né,
asked
sobre um roteiro que
for a consultancy job about a script that would
uma
work
história, né, uma menina
with a story of an Indigenous girl.
ela trouxe o roteiro pronto,
And she brought the script that was ready, and she wanted me to read it.
aí tudo não tinha nada a ver
But
com a história que, né, que eu conheci.
it had nothing to do
E eu
with the story. And I said, look, we're going to have to change a lot of things here. And
nunca mais entrou em contato.
she never contacted me again.
Daqui a pouco
And then all of a sudden,
não procurei. Aí
because I did not look for her anyway, but after all of a sudden, after a while, she came back
filme, né?
to talk, but it was to film
Muitas vezes a gente
already. And so many times we say no
com essas
to
pessoas
consultancy jobs with these people, especially white people,
e elas não aceitam, eles não
and they don't
aceitam
accept what we said, what we say. They don't accept the changes
Então, acho
in the scripts.
como coletivo que a gente
So, as a collective,
muitas dessas
in our work,
pessoas chegam
many of these people come to us so that we provide consultancy for their scripts, and
não aceita ser mudado.
many times we don't accept.
Isso a gente não tem, muitas
And
vezes não temos essa,
many times,
como é que eu vou falar?
how can I say this?
Não tem essa
There's no
para
negotiation.
negociar esses roteiros.
There's not an opening to negotiate the scripts.
Chato
So many times it's really uncomfortable to work when we have these scripts that are already ready because they have a resistance toward change. So that's it, especially, I'm saying people from Rio Grande do Sul state, they are very resistant to the indigenous culture in the south of Brazil. Many times we have this opportunity of showing work to them, but the audience in general is much smaller than in other states of the country and even abroad. So that's what I see in this state. We need to work a lot on the this matter with indigenous to have this acknowledgement. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what I had to say. So, thinking about this negotiation, I don't negotiate my life. So, when we are talking about scripts, I think that there are people who are friends, they're allies, and they are working and they want to propose other production means. And when we find these people, we're able to talk to them and we're able to explain to them what we have in the script and what we can change. But when we don't find these people, we can't negotiate our lives. And so there's no way to have this script and to sign off on it if it does not agree with it. What else? I think that's it. The urgencies, the meaning of urgency, we are talking about experiences, my experiences, and it took a long time to be able to produce, and then we could produce something that comes from this sense of urgency, because at the time it was necessary to talk about this. Every 23 minutes, there's someone who's dying, and we need to talk about that. And for us to be able to go to a point in which you're going to talk about affection and other possibilities, to be able to do something and experiment something, but we are in this urgency moment. And then how can we put these urgencies and also to have this understanding that this is going to happen and that this is required and that we need production like Mídia Provisória and that we need to see ourselves there and we need to see how Lázaro Ramos, the one who we knew as actor, as an actor now as a director, and how he brings this scenario into the screen and all of these languages, because there are a lot of things that he puts there in a long film. So all of this is a flow of urgency that we're here and we're putting this all there because we're starting to have access to them. So if we are at this time, we're going to use this moment for that to happen so that maybe we can at another moment do other things, or people who are arriving can already go to another path and can walk differently, and then we can also get to know them because we can see what Latin America is doing and acknowledge ourselves as Latin America and see what Latin America is producing and how they are doing things and what are their productions. So I don't know about other people, but we don't know much of ourselves and of our brothers. And so we can start to have these connections, the importance of being in this meeting and the importance of seeing, because this morning we had productions from Santa Catarina alone. So the importance of having this possibility of getting to know other proposals in Latin America by means of audiovisual pieces. So, Professor Fernanda, I still don't know how to answer what is this production in Latin America. I don't see a lot of it.
It's important for us to start to deepen our productions here as brothers and sisters, and understand that we are making film and TV, and this is also entertainment. I entered a group of women that are doing entertainment, and we are also doing entertainment. When we start dialoguing with the films that my films talk about the racial issues, and people talk about it's a militant film. Oh, all films are militant. And yes, we are producing entertainment as well. So I think we should understand what this work, entertainment, encompasses as well. So we are also inside this category, and we have to own these terms as well. So we'll be able to get into these productions. What else that I was going to say? Okay, time for me is made up. There are people in the world that doesn't count time. I don't wear a watch. We have a phone, but time for me. We talk about film. We bring space along. This structure, this territory. For me, space is much more a territory. For me, particularly, I like thinking about space as a character. I always make use of space because the space is talking a lot. I've always brought this element. And time, it has to do with each one's particular perception. Because I have my rhythm. They have their rhythms, each one has their internal rhythm. And if we're going to talk about filmmaking, if we're going to talk about what this modernity has made with time in filmmaking, we have a lot of criticism. This is an individual look. It's acceleration. It's like this. It's the drug of the century. Anxiety. You produce more anxiety, and that's why I'd like to listen more about time. It's another form of shifting in time. We have a lot of problems and anxiety because the whole time people request from us. I cannot have my own rhythm. It's my rhythm it has to do with my existence, and each body has its own chemistry. And we're talking about language, time. It flows in space. So how can we create these emotions, all these language elements in film? This also has to do with each person's perception. We as artists, what makes us the same? We're all very different, but each one's going to bring their worldview and consider what is important in each moment, and not necessarily about resistance. But we are minorities, right? Minorities, the so-called. So, but we have to have the courage to react by telling stories. So with in our own worldview. So this is about time, and sure, how we dialogue. Well, let me tell you, I think I don't even dialogue in these moments. So I'll give the mic to Camila. Well, about what Sandra said, I think it's very relative. There are a lot of messages to convey. We have the history, ancestrality, and not all the time that we have in filmmaking, theater, and short films, and feature films, or in a series. we are able to encompass everything that we want to say, the social and political topics that permeate our lives, our day-to-day lives. But we have to use the time we have and the cut that we can make. We will have to make it useful. So I believe that, for example, in the Black Panther film, this most recent one, there are a lot of critics to be made regarding the film, the very heavy colonialism. We have to see, of course, to identify with all the actors. There are a lot of things to be deconstructed. Our first work, Tarzan, also, it should have been deconstructed. We have finished it. We have the movie. We promote it, but at each time, I think we learn. We see that maybe it could have been different. We could have constructed a different way, or maybe we could have even get to it, because we're dealing with the deconstruction of a Disney image, even though the Tarzan story is previous to Disney. The image that people have is that one, the animation one. So I think that we would need work a lot, because it's a child's movie and we have to work the looted part. We're taking it to schools, and we would need several deconstructions or constructions to be able to convey our message or embrace everything. So time was not enough in this case, but unfortunately we were not able to embrace everything. And I believe that with companies, business people, it's non-negotiable. We had our story erased. We had the story violated for a long time. And for me, it's non-negotiable. We have our art, we have our projects. We have to have, they have to be embraced and contemplated and funded in the whole, on a whole. So our own, we don't have our own resources most of the times. Sometimes we have cultural laws if they're not overruled. Unfortunately, usually it's through them that we are able to fund the project, and also anti-racist education that white people have to have and understand that it's their function to be this object of atonement and simulation without the intervention in work and culture in our work. People, unfortunately, the time, Chronos time, it's purposes us. We had to finish. We have to finish. We could go on and on. I just have to wrap this up. Someone asked us about the expended time, and it's evident that we are not able to answer this now. We have been thinking about, in the perspective of history, there are other experiences. We can think this as a relational time, relating to other experiences. This opens another time possibility, but it's a compensation of another place aesthetic. We're not using aesthetics, but we're thinking about aesthesis. So these four cinemas here are aesthetics. They think about senses and not time. This expended time, this relational time, is a non-worry about usual time. So I stand up for these women. This was amazing time. And I would like to thank you on behalf of Aya. So Tati is going to give some notes, but I'd like to reinforce Camila, Sandra, Camila, Patrícia, Dionísio. Thank you so much. A lot of us share. And please applaud these people here.